So good evening to all the participants of this webinar. I welcome all of you on behalf of Madras Tax Bar, and I once again welcome Nitin as well as Joseph sir to take this session today on GST return. So the entire process will again be the same. They will take us through the session, and at the end we will have the question answer round. So you can raise your hands to ask the questions, or you can just drop in your questions in the chat box. So this session should last for an hour and a half. So accordingly, we will take up the question answer round also. So over to you, Nitin and Joseph sir. Good luck.
Good evening, all of you. Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible. Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. Good evening. Today, Nitin is going to take us through one of the very important topics in GST relating to returns and the concept of filing returns and the procedure connected with that. Actually, if you look at the erstwhile excise service tax registration, then filing of returns, then valuation, classification, the penalty proceedings, all of that, never in the past filing of returns has assumed so much of significance under the GST law. In fact, GST law today, returns is one of the burning topics or issues connected with that are extremely important today, because there is way the GST law was to be has not been done. They wanted to have this GSTR 1, 2, 3 with the auto-populating and automatically the data getting incorporated in from one to the other. That has not happened. So the government has to fall back upon some temporary arrangement like Form 3B and all that, which has given rise to a number of problems, which again Nitin will explain in detail. So today is a very important topic of return, which Nitin will do it, and end of the session there'll be we can have the question answer session. There are two important path-breaking judgments, one by the Gujarat High Court in AAP and the other one by the Delhi High Court in the case of Bharti Airtel, both of which again Nitin will cover in detail, and he will take us through from the beginning how the provisions, what are the provisions, and then through the issues and all that. Yes, over to you, Nitin.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. Prithvi, am I audible?
Yes, Nitin.
Yeah, okay. Good evening, everyone. I thank the Madras Tax Bar for again giving me this opportunity, AP Srinivas sir and Joseph Prabhakar sir for again guiding, and Prithvi for taking all the efforts to host every day. So the topic for today's evening discussion is returns under GST. So the first introduction, section 37 to 48 of the CGST Act, which are under chapter 9 of the CGST Act, deals with the provisions relating to returns under GST. To be very specific and frank, all those under returns under sections 37, 38 are not a return. Only those mentioned under section 39 and 44 are returns. Section 37 deals with a statement of outward supply, which is filed in GSTR 1. 38 deals with inward supplies details, which is in GSTR 2A. 39 is under which a return is specifically mentioned under, and also certain other sections like 44 annual return, etc. And the procedures regarding the filing of returns, the provisions are contained in section 37 to 48, but the provisions are mentioned and are specified in rule 59 to 84 of the CGST rules. As we all know, an indirect tax regime, it's almost all a self-assessment return, where the assessee self-assesses his liability and on offsetting his input tax credit makes the payment of tax to the government. And very specific changes in this the whole return system, even though it is being controlled by CGST Act and rules and all other TNGST Act and all other States Act and Union Territories Act, the major role in filing of this return is with GST Network, which is GST Network is a Section 8 company, and 24% of the shareholding is done by both center and state governments, and the other rest of the share is held by HDFC, ICICI, LIC Housing, etc. So this is this GST Network is managed by Infosys, and it has a very crucial role in return filing. And any taxpayer who has to file a return can file a return only through www.gst.gov.in. And it is a very interesting fact that in India, we have today, as per the GST Network's statistics, around 1.22 crores assessees are registered under GST. So starting with what are the modes of filing GST, I thought of keeping this session more practical than going on to the provisions. So practicality can be dealt. What are the modes of filing the returns under GST? One is what I have already said, which is through GST Network by logging into your account and www.gst.gov.in, then updating your statement of outward supply, availing input tax credit, making the payment through it, all can be done by going into the portal of gst.gov.in. But a taxpayer who has huge number of invoices, a business-to-business transaction where he is required to provide invoice-wise detail, it is practically not possible for him to log into the portal and manually type each and every entry. So understanding the business practices where each business have their own accounting softwares like Tally, SAP, etc. So what they have done is they have given an offline utility tool. So any business who is using any SAP or Tally, they can feed their purchase entry and sales entry in that. Based on that, the software which they use provide an output which is in JSON format or Excel format, which is designed based on the offline utility tool provided by GST Network. So a return can be filed in two forms initially, either through directly logging into gst.gov.in and manually feeding all the data, or as the business is growing on or a bigger business is there, it's not humanly possible to do that, even to avoid clerical mistakes also. A specific offline utility tool is being provided, which gives a structure of how the data which has to be uploaded should be maintained. So based on that, the software, SAP or Tally, gives you the output, which is to be converted into JSON format, and it has to be uploaded in the portal in offline way. I'll also be practically dealing with it in the next slides, how it is to be done. The other way, which is for the very small taxpayers who merely don't have any transactions of supply or purchase during that particular month, during the particular return period, so they can file nil returns. And for filing nil returns, it's not required to log in through www.gst.gov.in and doing it. They can also file a nil return through their SMS, which has also been explained and given the GST portal. And also there comes the fourth, which is the private party, who is GST Suvidha provider, which have been licensed by the government and the GST Network, where a very big business who, like we all know, we have seen like 1.22 crore registered persons are registered, taxable assessees are registered. So portal would be having a lot of traffic, and uploading in the portal would provide more errors. So a concept of GST Suvidha providers came in, which was implemented even during the initial stage of GST itself, where 32 GST Suvidha providers as per today have been recognized and licensed by the government, where they, through the GST Suvidha providers, you can prepare your returns, and it can be transmitted to the GST Suvidha provider, and it will go and fit into the server of GST Network, and through which returns can be submitted but not filed. As far as I have seen, and we have filed the returns, it is seen that through GST Suvidha provider, the details of the outward supply in GSTR 1 or 3B can be uploaded, can be submitted through this GST Suvidha provider, but returns cannot be filed. To file a return, it has to be done only through providing your electronic verification code, where an OTP will be received to the registered mobile number, or through the digital signature certificate, DSC, for a company or body corporate, whoever has it, they can file it through that. So GST Suvidha provider is playing a major role today. Big companies are using it to avoid the traffic and portal and to give the data as they require. It is being routed through GST Suvidha providers. Now, returns are not common for all the taxpayers or all the assessees. Various taxpayers are there, as we know. For each and every taxpayer, a different set of returns are being notified. A normal taxpayer is a person who is regular, who is not a composition dealer or any others. He is a normal taxable person. And even this here, the normal category includes a casual taxable person also. Next comes a composition supplier who is registered under Section 10, who cannot avail any input tax credit, as well as who cannot collect any tax from the outward supply, whereas at 1% or 5% it has to be paid to the government. Tax has to be paid to the government. For them, a separate return format is being prescribed. Non-resident taxable person are a specific category of assessees who are not in India, but who do a business in India, who comes to India for a purpose of, let us assume, an exhibition. For a temporary period, they come into India, and registration is being provided to them through their passport, because they don't have a PAN number, through their passport, and a period of 90 days of registration is being given. And for them, a specific category of return is being notified. Then comes the input service distributor, which we also had in the erstwhile central excise and service tax regime, where a common person, where the common expenses are made, common expenses are paid off, or the services is availed, assuming a head office should take an input service distributor for a bigger business, where it commonly accrues chartered accountant services or some other software services, and distribute the appropriate or the proportionate credit, input tax credit, to the respective branches and head office based on the turnover, which is being mentioned in Section 20 of the CGST Act. Then comes for them, for distributing or channelizing and distributing the credit, specific return is being mentioned, that is GSTR 6. We will also be discussing that. Then comes the TDS, tax deducted at source. This is not the income tax TDS, as we all know. It is a tax deducted at source under Section 51 of the CGST Act, where mostly the government entities who have been specifically mentioned and notified subsequently in the notification are required to collect or required to deduct 2% of 1% CGST, 1% SGST, and 2% IGST while making the payment to their supplier. And that return has to be filed by a TDS deductor under GSTR 7, and tax collection at source, which is generally done by an e-commerce operator. They also collect 1% of the GST of the amount which is to be paid to their supplier, and even for that, a specific return under GSTR 8 is being notified. So these are the various types of taxpayers, and for each and various types of taxpayers, there are different returns. So before going on to the present situation and the newly proposed GST returns, it would be very much important and necessary for us to understand what were the proposed GST returns during the implementation of GST, but due to the technical difficulties which have not come into place even till today. And understanding of GST return is very important as far as I understand, because this is the Pakka return which is being made from what is there in the GST provisions and rules. So I'd be starting with GSTR 1. This GSTR 1 is also prevailing now. GSTR 1 is the return. It's I also want to say that I would be mentioning GSTR 1 and GSTR 2A as a return, but they are just a summary of statement for the purpose of convenience. I'm naming them as return because they are under Section 37 and 38 and not under 39. So assuming GSTR 1 and 2A as a return, I'm proceeding forward. GSTR 1 is where a statement of outward liability is being mentioned by the supplier, where invoice level details for a business to business transaction, a consolidated details for a business to customer transaction, all the outward supplies through which a liability of a supplier can be determined is uploaded through GSTR 1. So once the supplier uploads the GSTR 1 and the due date for uploading GSTR 1 or filing this GSTR 1 return is 10th day of the subsequent month. So for the return period of May 2020, for return period of May 2020, the supplier has to file the GSTR 1 returns within 10th of June 2020. So once he files within 10th of June 2020, all those uploaded details auto-populates in GSTR 2A of the recipient. So once, what is GSTR2A? It is a return, it is a mechanism which is from the side of the recipient and not from the side of a supplier. Supplier uploads all his liabilities outward supplies through GSTR1. It auto-populates in GSTR2A and the recipient can view it in GSTR2A. That's all. GSTR2A has nothing more than that. Now, whatever is reflected in GSTR2A, either the supplier recipient can accept it if the details uploaded by the supplier match properly with the invoice which he has in his hand, the recipient has in his hand. He can check the invoice number, date of invoice, taxable value, tax amount, whether CGST and SGST is being properly charged. All these things should be verified by the recipient. In GSTR2A, he can accept it if all matches with his purchase books. He has an option of rejection. He can reject it if the supply is, if the credit which is appearing in his portal is not at all of what he has purchased. Like example, the supplier in GSTR1 would have put someone's wrong GSTR number, so it would have been appearing in the recipient's 2A, and the recipient can reject it. So whatever ITC or the entry which is being reflecting in 2, if it is accepted, it becomes the input tax credit for the recipient, and that whatever is uploaded by the supplier in GSTR1 becomes the liability of the supplier. So now other two options were also available in GSTR2. One is to modify. If suppose the supplier has wrongly mentioned any amount of tax or invoice date is wrong, or instead of CGST and SGST, if he has uploaded as IGST. So all these corrections can be verified and it can be modified by the recipient once it is being modified. Or there is another option. If the supplier has left off to file, left off to put an invoice detail, then the recipient in GSTR2 can also add a invoice which has been left out by the supplier. So whatever modification or addition which has been done by the recipient in GSTR2 gets auto reflected again to the supplier in GSTR1A. So again, I am summarizing it. In GSTR1, the supplier uploads all the outward liability supplies. In GSTR2A, for business to business transaction, all those who are registered recipients, they get the credits auto populated in their GSTR2A. They can view in GSTR2A. In GSTR2, either it can be accepted, rejected, modified, or which has not been uploaded can be added. So all these can be done by the recipient's end. When it has been modified or something is added, it goes to GSTR1A of the supplier, and the supplier would cross-verify it. After cross-verifying it, yes, if the supplier notes that he has done some mistake, he can accept the edit which has been done by the recipient. And once it is being done, the recipient gets the credit of that also. So in GSTR3, which comes into the last leg, all the outward liabilities uploaded by the supplier in GSTR1 auto-populates as liability in GSTR3, and whatever credit which has been accepted by the recipient becomes eligible ITC. So after seeing the liability, less with the input tax credit available, if any balance is payable, then using cash, the payment can be made in GSTR3. This was the proposed return system, which even till today, 8th June 2020, has not come into force. A part of this has come into force, which we'll be seeing in the next slide. So, but since this GSTR1, 2A, 2, 1A, and 3 were not ready, government was not ready with it during July 2017, but it has to collect revenue from the suppliers, from the industry for whatever tax they have collected. So in between, they brought a new return, which was debated whether it is a return at all or not, as called as GSTR3B. So to avoid this, GSTR3, since that this was not ready, technologically this was not ready, GSTR3B was brought in. So now what happens? This is the prevailing system even till today. GSTR1, as we have seen, is being uploaded by the supplier. GSTR2A, the credits appear in the recipient's GSTR2A. And here it is very important and crucial to note that there is no GSTR2, there is no GSTR1A. Since the technology and the functioning was not ready, the government has postponed it. Even till now, it has not been implemented. But in GSTR1A and 1 and 2A, revenue cannot be collected. For the purpose of collecting revenue, a return called as GSTR3B was introduced. Now let us understand what is GSTR1 in a practical manner. So what I thought was GSTR1. I'll give a brief of whatever I understood of what is GSTR1. GSTR1 is the detail. We'll deal with a practical case example. A supplier has a business to business transaction as well as business to customer transaction also. So he has some 10 outward liability of business to business transaction, B2B supply, business to business transaction. Invoice wise, business to business transactions invoices should be uploaded in GSTR1. If it is only then the recipient can get the credit only when it appears in his GSTR2A and payment of tax for the same is being made. So it is mandatory from the supplier's end for all the business to business transaction, invoice wise details should be provided. Invoice wise details means GST number of the recipient, date of invoice, amount in that, and the HSN code also, which you'd be seeing further. For all the B2C transactions, it is not required to provide invoice to invoice details. There is an exception to one case where business to customer transaction, whereas a supplier Vasanth & Co is in Chennai, he is supplying a refrigerator to an unregistered person at Andhra Pradesh, and the invoice value of the refrigerator is more than 2.5 lakhs. It is assumed as 3 lakhs, even though it is a business to customer transaction where the customer is not registered under GST. Even if it is a B2C transaction, invoice wise details should be uploaded because it is an interstate supply. Supplier is in Tamil Nadu and the recipient is in Andhra Pradesh. Since it is an interstate supply and the value is more than 2.5 lakhs, invoice wise detail also has to be provided. So only in these two scenarios, for all B2B transactions, business to business transactions and business to customer transactions having a invoice value of more than 2.5 lakhs and interstate, if it is an interstate supply, invoice wise details are to be provided. If it is a business to customer transaction, where the customer is under business to customer qualifies when the customer recipient is an unregistered person. If it is suppose having an example, Vasanth & Co in Tamil Nadu at Chennai has made 5 business to customers transaction having invoice value of 10,000, 5 invoices of 10,000, 5 transactions of rupees 10,000, then the value becomes 50,000. Since it is an interstate supply and the rate of tax is 5%, let us assume it's of 5%. So one consolidated entry in GSTR1 as place of supply Andhra Pradesh, charging IGST, rate of tax at 5%, value is 50,000. So one single entry is enough. No 5 invoice level entry, invoice wise entry is required. When it is an intrastate supply also, if same Vasanth & Co has 5% supply, 18%, 28%, also one single consolidated entry of total value of 5%, charging CGST and SGST is required. Charging CGST and SGST for 18% and same for 28%. So for a B2C transaction, other than interstate supply having a invoice value of more than 2.5 lakhs, invoice wise details is not required in GSTR1. GSTR1, since it's an outward supply statement, it also contains details of export transactions. Zero rated supplies are also to be made. Any debit note issued for an increase in price or a credit note issued for a discount or a sales return, that can also be provided. That should also be provided in GSTR1, because only when a debit note or credit note has been uploaded by the supplier, the benefit of the same can be availed by the recipient when it is a business to business transaction. And even for a business to customer transaction, when a consolidated credit note is being issued, the output liability should be reduced to that extent. Then even if any advances have been received for supply of services, because goods are not, advances received for goods are not taxable after 2017 November. So whatever advances which are being received for supply of services, the same are also to be shown, because invoice for the same would have not been updated. Then when an invoice has been raised, the same advance can be adjusted. Then there comes a very interesting thing of HSN summary. HSN wise summary is also required to be provided. The due date for filing this return as per law, I'll also say what is as per law and as per practice also. As per law, they say the 10th of the subsequent month is the due date for filing of GSTR1. But government has repeatedly for I think past 8 to 10 months, it is 11th of the subsequent month. and for quarterly. So even GSTR1 filing, classification has been made. A choice is given to the supplier, assessee. He can also file GSTR1 monthly, or he also can file quarterly. But the condition is those who are filing quarterly should have a turnover of up to 1.5 crores. So any person, any assessee who has a turnover of more than 1.5 crores, they cannot file GSTR1 quarterly. They are mandatorily required to file GSTR1 monthly. So GSTR1, those taxpayers who have opted for filing monthly, they have to file within 10th of the subsequent month. As per notification, it has been amended, and 11th of the subsequent month as for the past 8-10 months. And due to COVID situation, it has been extended till 30/6/2020 for the period of March, April, and May. For taxpayers who opted quarterly, it is the last day of the month succeeding the quarter. For the quarter of April, May, and June, it is 31st of July 2020 is the due date for filing GSTR1. So what I thought, it would be better for us to see practically how it appears in portal. So I also have a login. We can also check through portal how each and every column is reflected in portal. So I'm logging in to GST portal where I can also see. Okay. This is the GST portal, www.gst.gov.in, which I said. Now this is the return. This is how the dashboard appears. Through this, all the returns are being filed. The name of the assessee comes here. The GST number of the assessee comes here. Annual return has a separate tab. Now we are going to the return dashboard and see how the return appears. So going on, there comes a pop-up. There comes a pop-up. Choose the return period also. Now we are in 2021. For the month of May, the return is due GSTR1, which has to be filed by 11th of 6 or 11th of June or 30th of June due to COVID situation. But I'm just going on to GSTR1 of this particular assessee. I'm also checking like this is what a GSTR1 appears. I'll also show that offline tool which I've already said. So I'm going again 2021 for the period of May. See, one, it can be filed through online, which is the online option is here where I've kept the cursor. The other is offline. So once the data is ready from the SAP or from my tally, whichever I have, the supplier has an extract of which comes in Excel format or a JSON format can be uploaded. So I have to go here, I have to choose the file. So the file should be in JSON. I have to upload it here. Once it is uploaded, a processing will come and all the data will be uploaded through this. Once it is being uploaded, so it goes back again and again. So I have to start from first. So once, if it is done through offline, automatically once when the file is being uploaded, all the data appears through it, appears here. All the data come in here. Number of invoices would be reflected here. Debit notes would be reflected here. So I thought of going on, if a taxpayer is filing online, how the portal appears, what are all the details to be provided. This assessee, assuming he is a very small taxpayer, they have some 2 B2B invoices. Okay, it would be better. Okay, they have some 2 B2B invoices. Then how the returns is to be filed for a B2B, business to business transaction. The recipient's GST number is to be put here. Once the recipient's GST number is being typed here, I am not having any GST number, so I'm not putting here. Once it is being feeded here, automatically the recipient's name auto-populates as per which is given in the GST number. Then the supplier has to feed the GST invoice number also, invoice date, place of supply has to be chosen, whether it is within the CGST or within Tamil Nadu or which state, if it is an IGST transaction. So what I'm going to do, I'll make one Tamil Nadu, the assessee is also of Tamil Nadu. So I'm making it, once it comes here, it is, okay, assessee is of Tamil Nadu. So I'm also putting the place of supply is Tamil Nadu. So automatically it should be a CGST and SGST transaction. I should not pay IGST for it. I'm also putting a value of rupees, some 10,000 rupees, and total value which will include 11,800, assuming it's an 18% transaction, and value is also of 10,000 rupees. So it is seen automatically CGST and SGST appear here. So if the recipient if the recipient, it's an interstate supply, recipient is outside Tamil Nadu, assuming Kerala, if I put rupees 10,000 here, CGST and SGST go off, only IGST appears. It's an IGST transaction. So portal is very well designed here in this system. So once the B2B transactions, business to business transactions are uploaded here, it auto-populates. The total comes here. Total value comes here. So this is for B2B, business to business. Then business to customer invoice-wise details, which I have said for having a value of more than 2.5 lakh. Even for that case, a business to business, business to customer transaction invoice-wise details are to be provided. So this tab deals with that. The third is this system. This is 9B dealing with credit note or debit note. This is particularly for registered recipients. If my recipient is registered and I have uploaded, the supplier has uploaded in this table 4A of the previous month, and some credit note is being issued in the subsequent month. So invoice reference number is very much required. This is one of the very important return system here. It asks the recipient's number and the recipient's name auto-populates here. Then the credit note or debit note number. If supposing this transaction is a credit note transaction, then the credit note details, credit note number is to be feeded here, and credit note date also. Then original invoice number is very mandatory. It's a mandatory one. This system is designed in such a manner that if suppose for the month of April an invoice is being issued and during May a credit note is being issued, only when I put the invoice number here, which the supplier should have uploaded in April. Only if it is being uploaded in April and already there in the GST portal, only then this credit note will take here, or it will show an error. It will say no credit note exists like that. Then the original invoice date should also be put here. Note type, whether it is a credit note or debit note should be put. The note value, whether it's an interstate supply or intrastate supply. So now this created a panic between the trade and industry. Very big players, very big manufacturing industries have numerous number of credit notes for one particular assessee. But the law does not say anywhere like you cannot issue a consolidated credit note, because here the portal is designed in such a way I have to put the invoice number against which I'm issuing a credit note. But in 1/2/2019, the CGST Amendment Act came in. There they inserted a provision in section 34, if I'm not wrong, where stating that a consolidated credit note is fine when the recipient is same. So firm ABC has issued made a supply during April, and subsequently credit notes are being issued for 5 invoices. One particular credit note can be issued, tracking of all those invoice details, and one credit note can be filed here. So, but even today, the portal is designed in such a way it is not accepting consolidated credit note. Next is dealing with credit note for unregistered persons. Next is an export for zero data supply. For export invoices, the data are to be fed in 6A. Now, a very good thing happens here. Many assessees have also made some mistakes here, and they also received few notices. They have received from mail from the IceGate also, where 6A, the export invoices are to be uploaded in 6A. For all those transactions which are uploaded in 6A, it is for export. Now, the tax for that, this deals with I'm dealing with a situation of with the payment of tax. So when an assessee has uploaded the details in 6A of GSTR1, for the same liability should be paid in GSTR3B, through which the liability is being paid. Whatever invoices which are uploaded in 6A, it should be fed in 3.1B of GSTR3B. That specifically, while dealing with GSTR3B, will again touch upon that, where it says for all export, whatever your turnover was for export and tax was paid, please put up in this column. If the assessee is not putting in GSTR3B in that column, he's not feeding or updating in that column or in some other column, then the taxpayer face refund issues. For an export of with payment of tax export, there is no requirement to file RFD01 and to get a refund. This automates the export value in 6A, reconciles with the payment of tax made in GSTR3B, and IceGate provide the refund through that channel. But when the refund, the details are not properly put up in GSTR 3B, the refund gets rejected there. So assessees get email from the department for all those reasons. Now, if any amendment is there in B2B invoices, those B2B invoices which were filed in for this first table in one previous month, then found out that they require an amendment where some mistake has been made, then that mistake amendment can be done through this table 9A. The same is for interstate B2C transactions here in this table. Then amendment in any export invoices, amendment for a debit note or credit note to a registered supplier, and amendment for unregistered supplier. Now, again, this can be touched up. Before that, I will go on to the 7th table. This deals with B2C. This is also a very good feature given in the GST portal. A consolidated invoice is being raised. Consolidated return is being filed. Suppose the transaction is intrastate within the state of Tamil Nadu, and the value of my total sale, a 5% outward supply, is rupees 10,000. Then I select the rate of tax here, 5%. Then it automatically auto-populates here, and one filing of one entry is fine. There is no requirement of invoice level entry. If it is an interstate supply, it is to Kerala, then I have to, it automatically becomes interstate, IGST is being paid. So this is one very good feature where no invoice level entry is done. A consolidated uploading of invoices, a consolidated outward supply value is being provided. Then, but now a question may arise within us. This table, whatever is uploaded, feeded in this table, is net of debit notes and credit notes. Okay, is net of debit notes and credit notes. Then what type of amendment would come here? What type of amendment would come here? Credit notes or debit notes should be issued to a B2C transaction. Thinking on it, the solution for that is for B2C invoice level data which are being given for transaction of interstate supply having a turnover of more than 2.5 lakh. Credit notes and debit notes issued for those transactions would come in this table and not the normal B2C transactions. The credit note or debit note which has been issued for normal B2C transactions would be deducted while providing the outward supply liability in table 7 itself. Next comes the value of exempted supply, which do not have a tax implication here. Since it's an nil rated or exempted supply or supply to an which does not have any tax effect, the value is alone are to be provided here. For an interstate supply to a registered person, intrastate supply to unregistered person, same in the case of interstate also. So this is just for outward turnover basis and not for tax. There is no tax liability in that. Next table is advances. If any advance is being received for supply of services, then the advance details are to be put up in this table. Then when the adjustment can be done for the advances, when an invoice is being issued, then this table is something new in GST era where HSN-wise summary is being asked. And classification of it, only when the goods or services have been classified, the HSN-wise summary can be provided. The government, understanding the difficulties faced by the trade and industry, have come up with a concept, have given relief, stating that any taxable person who has a turnover up to 1.5 crores are not mandated to fill this table 12. Those taxpayers having a turnover of up to 1.5 crores to 5 crores, they can file they have to provide first 2 digits of the HSN code, and those having a turnover of more than 5 crores are required to provide 4 digits. So this is what the HSN summary asks for. Now, whatever, if a taxable person has a turnover of more than 5 crores or 2 crores, he has to fill this table. No, whatever is being filled in this table, the total of that should be equal to adding of all these outward supplies made for B2B minus any credit notes plus debit notes plus B2C supply. So all those done as a whole, it should match with HSN-wise summary. So this is what GSTR1 is basically about. I'm not going in each table due to the paucity of time. So again, going on to my PPT. One second, I'll go on to my PPT. Yeah. So this is what GSTR1 is basically all about, where the outward supply, details of outward supply is being provided. Next, whatever, now once again, I have missed one thing. Due date I have also touched, late fee. One interesting issue to be understood for late fee, the section provides per day 100 rupees late fee, CGST per day 100 rupees SGST. But government has said those who have not filed GSTR 1 can file up to 17th of January 2020, and if they file up to 17th of January 2020 for all the previous months, then the late fee is waived off. Now, again, I think some notices or some demands may be raised on late fee by the government for those assessees who have not filed GSTR 1 after 17th of even until 17th of 2020. For those who have filed after 17th of 2020, I think late fee can be collected. Late fee will be collected, but there is no mechanism for collecting late fee through GSTR 1 because no payment of tax or any interest or penalty can be, the option is available. No option like that is available in GSTR 1. Now, whatever outward supply is being uploaded by the supplier in GSTR 1 auto-populates in GSTR 2A of the recipient. Now, the recipient cannot do anything. Just he gets the data of who all have uploaded, who all have filed their GSTR 1. The option of whether the assessee has filed or submitted populates in when we take the report of GSTR 2A. So once GSTR 2A, I'll also, if required, I'll also go to the GST network portal for the tax period 2021 people would have not filed the GSTR 1. So I'm taking of March 2019-20 where GSTR 2A would have been filed. So we'll view one GSTR 2A, how it appears. So this is like that. This is the online way which can be appeared viewing on. So all those suppliers who have filed GSTR 1, their invoice wise details come here. So this can be, this extract of this return can be taken in Excel sheet format and it can be reconciled with my purchase books. Whatever purchases have been made as per the books of the recipient. So now the importance of 2A was not much because technically there were many problems. Practically speaking, there are many problems in the initial days because GSTR 1 itself came only in October. Most of the taxpayers did not file GSTR 1 during the initial days because they were not, their portal, their software was not ready to upload all the invoice based details. It took some time to settle. By March 18 or April 18, they slowly started filing GSTR 1. Even GSTR 1 did not collect late fee also. So assessees also slowly took their time, understood it, made their software accordingly, then filed. Later on, it took another 3-4 months to reflect in GSTR 2A. Until then, 2A was not ready. Later on, 2A appeared. In few transactions, personally, I have also seen where GSTR 1 was uploaded by the supplier, but the entry did not reflect in 2A at all. There are many these technical reports. While going and logging and checking the GSTR 2A, it appears, but taking in the Excel output, it did not appear. So from the beginning, there was no much importance for this GSTR 2A because it was only a viewing purpose. No accept, reject, modify was not there. It is only in GSTR 2. So people understood it's just they are doing something, it's appearing in their portal. They just knew how much it has been filed by the supplier. But most of the assessees took credit whatever which was as per their purchase entry book, as per their books, based on section 16. If they have received an invoice, if they have received the goods and services, if they have made the payment. Even the genuine taxpayers, most of them did that, but they didn't have, the assessee really didn't have the option, the recipient didn't have the option to check whether the supplier has made payment of tax or not at all, because 16(2) provides the condition that supplier should have made payment of tax. But practically, since the original return did not come in, even until today, supplier recipient has no option in the GST portal to check whether the supplier has made the payment of tax at all or not. Hence, 16(2)(d) cannot, if it is read from the angle of supplier, then today there is no option for the recipient to check whether the return has been filed by the supplier or not, or the payment of tax has been made by the supplier or not. Generally, from the beginning, 2A didn't have very big purpose at all. But suddenly, government started realizing that their revenues were gradually decreasing. The target was not achieved. So they looked on what may be the possible reason. One was the supplier was not making the payment of tax at all, but the recipient was taking credit because the matching, there was no requirement of, because practically there was no possibility to check whether the payment of tax was made by the supplier or not. So the recipients, the assessees were enjoyingly taking the credit as per their books of accounts. Then what happened? In October 2018, a new rule was inserted by notification 49 of 2019, which was a very big bomb blast for many of the assessees, big concerns and all, because this rule does not have any legal backing from the provisions of law. But a rule was inserted, Rule 36.4, which said an assessee can claim 10% of the ITC, more than that what is matched. To simplify through an example, suppose as per the GSTR 2A, whatever the supplier has uploaded and reflected in GSTR 2A, if the total credit amounts to rupees 1 lakh, on one hand, which I have kept in my left hand side, 1 lakh in GSTR 2A. On the right hand side, as per the purchase books, the credit is of 2 lakhs. So now the assessee is required to download the 2A from portal and reconcile, mix match both GSTR 2A and the purchase book and check what all are the matches, matched invoices. So I am assuming a very genuine, a very basic, without any complication situation where whole 1 lakh is being matched. Invoice wise it is being matched, or value wise it is being matched. So GSTR 2A details in one hand and purchase register in one hand, when cross verified, when reconciled, the total amount is matching. Now this rule says whatever is matched plus 10% you can avail. So 1 lakh plus 10%, 1 lakh 10,000. That's all can be availed. Earlier, before this rule, the assessee did not care about GSTR 2A. Generally, all whatever was appearing, whatever was in the books of accounts, they took. So totally 2 lakhs was availed, because as per assessee, he has made the payment of tax. He had the receipt of invoice. He had the goods and he has received the goods and services. He didn't care whether the supplier has filed or not, because he didn't have an option to check that. But after inserting this rule, the importance was given to GSTR 2A. So reconciliation of GSTR 2A in books of accounts was made. Now the assessee who generally used to take, if this rule was not the 2 lakh, now he was able to take only 1 lakh 10,000 rupees, 90,000 blockage of working capital. I'm telling an example of very small assessee, but a very big assessee who huge amount of working capital is being blocked by them. But personally, I feel this rule is it is vulnerable to be challenged before the various high courts, and I think also writ petition is being filed somewhere in Delhi High Court challenging this rule, because there is no legal backing. No provision says that. There is one provision, section 43A, which has been drafted, but it is not yet notified. It is not yet notified. 43A says this specific condition is laid down in 43A, that 43A is not into effect because it is made for the new return system. We'll also be seeing, if the time is available, the new return system. The new return system enables that functioning. The system itself is made in that way that this rule can be satisfied. There is a chances of satisfying this rule, this condition. But today, as on date, since there is no 43A, no other section helps, no legal backing is available, I think Rule 36.4 is vulnerable, and the working capital of many of the assessees should not be disturbed by inserting such a rule when the system is not at all ready. And I think my friend Sai has put in chat that is challenged in pending in Madras High Court as well in L&T. Okay. Now, next type of return. So after understanding GSTR 1 and 2A, now we are looking on what is GSTR 3B really. This is whether a return or not. It was a very big debate. There was a separate case for it. We'll also be seeing it. But what are all the details which is asked in GSTR 3B? GSTR 3B, it is a summary of GSTR 1 and whatever input tax rate I have. So an assessee looking on to his liability which he has reflected in GSTR 1 can make shall provide the outward supply liability in GSTR 3B. Then the value of exempted nil rate supplier also to be provided. RCM liability. RCM liability is generally where the recipient is liable to make the payment of tax. Nowhere GSTR 1 provides the recipient, because the recipient does not file GSTR 1. So outward liability cannot be shown. RCM liability cannot be shown. So as on today, RCM liability can be provided in GSTR 3B return only. And even whatever input tax credit is to be availed can be availed in GSTR 3B return only today. No other option is available as far as to my knowledge. And after after ascertaining the liability, then subtracting it with the eligible ITC in hand, if any payment of tax by cash is required, then payment is being made. Even if any reversals are required, ITC reversal is required when an assessee has wrongly availed some credit, or a reversal is required as per Rule 42 or 43 for exempt supplies. Even that reversal is to be made through GSTR 3B alone. There is no other option as of date, or the payment of tax has to be made through DRC 03, which is not a reversal, but payment of tax is being made. Then any interest liability for belated filing of return or any late fees to be paid is to be paid through GSTR 3B. So I also thought GSTR 3B is really a summary of GSTR 3. I have also looked on to the GSTR 3 returns. One main distinction between both is GSTR 3 was auto-populating from GSTR 1 and 2. Here, since 2 is not there and 3B is not linked with the GSTR 1, no auto-population is there. There is one chances of fraud where the supplier would be updating or providing all the details in GSTR 1, but not paying the full tax in GSTR 3B. So suppose the supplier can show a liability of 1 lakh and just make a payment of tax for the taxable value of 10,000 rupees. This also is happening today, but there are no chances of avoiding it because GSTR 1 and 3B is not linked. It can be found only through either GSTR on annual audit or departmental audit, etc. So I also thought of going on to the GSTN portal and see how does this 3B appears. GSTR 3B. I'm taking a GSTR 3B for the period of May 2020. This is even GSTR 3B can be prepared through offline, where a JSON can be uploaded and it can be filed through it, or preparing online. Earlier, there were several writ petitions in various high courts also, where assessee did not completely understand the form GSTR 3B and they would file under the wrong heading. So this created a more trouble and problem. So after understanding the difficulties, when they approached the various courts for amending the 3B return or rectifying it, the GSTN had understood the issue and sorted out it by making it in the questionnaire format. Whether the first question asks whether it is a nil return or not. If I press nil return, no other option is available because no outward supply is being made, no ITC is being availed. So all are blocked. So once it is not a nil return, the first question is whether there is an outward supply is being made, which is also liable to be paid under reverse charge. I give yes here. Then whether any supply have been made to a composition dealer or an unregistered person having an interstate supply. This C table deals where the recipient is not eligible to take the credit of whatever is being paid here. Then I also give yes for our understanding now. Then the fourth table is very important table dealing with input tax credit, availment of input tax credit. Next one is regarding any inward supplies of nil rate exempted have been any receipt, any purchase of nil rated or exempted or non-GST supply is being made in that particular return period. Any interest is to be paid or late fee. Then whether do you have any liability due to Tran 1? This is always blocked. So I've given yes to all to understand in table wise. Starting with first table 3.1, this is the table through which the outward liability is decided. In this table, the first one deals with outward taxable supplies other than zero rated, nil rated, and exempted. So all the outward taxable supplies, even RCM will not come here because RCM is an inward supplies, but liability is on the recipient. So all the outward liability other than an zero rated supply, nil rated, exempted, and RCM liability for which I am liable to pay tax, it should be provided here. In the first one, taxable value here, IGST, CGST, and SGST, it is not auto-populated. One of the reasons for not auto-population is the supplier may have a tax rate of 5%, 12%, 18, nil, exempted, anything. So it is not auto-populated here. Everything is to be manually fed. Here also, one interesting change later on was provided. What happened if here the CGST liability is provided as ₹900, but assessee would wrongly put here as 90 rupees. So this mistake often happened. Then they realized that always whatever is liabilities for CGST will also be there for SGST. So what they did, the portal got a new feature. 900 means, or 9000 means auto-populated 9000 here. Whatever you are putting for CGST, it also becomes for SGST. So this feature was inserted to avoid the errors which were generally made. Then RCM liability is being put here. Whatever receipt has been made. Then this is regarding the outward liability. This is where this 3.2 deals with B2C interstate supply having a value of more than 2.5 lakhs. Even though the detail is shown here, the value should also be shown in 3.1 because tax liability calculated as per 3.1 and not 3.2. 3.2 will have the detail, but this amount should also be included in 3.1. Next is ITC. This is also a very interesting table. Input tax credit, which was paid for, which we have received for import of goods. Then import of services. Import of goods, IGST was paid. ITC for import of goods can be availed for import of services. Then inward supplies which are liable to reverse charge. So this table 3 here should match with the 3.1 liability which I am paying. In service tax regime, we used to take liability was paid in 1 month, credit was taken in the subsequent month, but here in GST no such restriction is there. Whatever outward liability for the reverse charge shown in that particular month, credit can be taken during this month itself, during that particular month itself. So it should match for all those assessees for whom the RCM credit is ineligible to ITC. They should not take it here. Then there will be a mismatch between the liability. The amount will not be matching. And for the banking companies where for credit is available only 50% of the total ITC, even for them, they would have paid the liability fully, and 50% of ITC would be availed here. Then whatever credit which have been received from input service distributor, because it would not have been directly received from the supplier at all, ISD would be channeling it through GSTR 6, which we would see later, and all those credit will be appearing in two-way of the recipient. Based on that, the credit can be availed here. Next is the very important, they have kept as a residuary clause as all other ITC, but only in this table, all the credits for normal supply, normal inward supply, normal receipt, all the credits are availed in this table, table 5. It's not a residuary entry. This is a very important entry. Next is ITC reversed. Any Rule 42 reversal where I can claim ITC here, but it has to be reversed after calculation of exempted supply and all, or any other reversal where I have wrongly availed it. Now I have to reverse it. It can be reversed through clause 2 of B. Then net ITC available. This calculation is auto-populated after total available minus the reversal, required reversal. The total auto-populates here. Next comes 17.5. This is where ineligible ITC, where the recipient is not eligible to take, just the disclosure is being made. ITC is not, the total calculation does not consider D. The total calculation, those figure appear in C. D is where just a statement is being provided of the total value of ineligible ITC. All these, so much detail is being asked. More than these details are asked in GSTR 9 in the annual audit. So once an assessee files all these GSTR 1, 3B properly, only then GSTR 9 can be filed properly. Next is the value of exempted supply, which do not have inward supplies. All these outward were seen in table 3.1. What all supplies, inward supplies, which are received exempted or nil rate, the value of those are to be put here. It will not have any tax since it is exempt. Value are to be put over here in table 5. Next comes any interest is payable if any late fee is payable. If assume this is a practical issue where returns for the month of April 2020, due date is 20th. Let us assume it's on 20th of May. If the return is filed on 22nd of May, then there is a delay of 2 days. For those 2 days, the late fee is 100 rupees. Then during the filing of the April return itself, late fee is not calculated. When the May return, subsequent month return is filed, the late fee for the previous month return is to be paid. That auto-populates in table 5.1. So this is briefly, then after putting all these value here, all this value in 3.1, the liability, ITC in table 4, then the payment of tax comes in table 6. That is done when it is being made for proceed for payment. since I have not put any values here, I don't think so any amount would be reflecting in the next slide, next step. Anyway, I'll have a try on it. Since it shows an error since no outward liability is being put, it doesn't comes. So this is how the outward liability is calculated and paid through GSTR 3B. So this is how it works in the portal practically. Now going on back to my slide. So we have seen all these details which were asked in GSTR 3B, based on which the payment was made. So I'm skipping all these slides because we have practically seen. Now the due date. The due date for filing GSTR 3B is 20th. And at times they have extended through notification a day or two. But there was a serious issue during October 2019. A lot of taxpayers, see, it's a mentality of all the assessees to file the return on the due date. Okay, so there was too much of traffic. Every time there is too much of traffic, but on October 2019, there was a very serious issue where several allegations and complaints were raised on this GST network also. So what happened then? Government decided, let's do one thing for all those taxpayers who have a turnover, aggregate turnover of above 5 crores. Let them file on 20th of the subsequent month. So for May 2020 return, it should be filed within 20th of June 2020 for those taxpayers who are having a turnover of above 5 crores. For taxpayers having a turnover up to 5 crores, they relaxed it. A staggered manner was was notified. Where in the notification they stated 22nd as one due date and 24th as another due date. 22nd applies. They have specified the states geographically. They have classified 22nd and 24th. For example, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Gujarat, all those taxpayers registered there have to file on 22nd. Taxpayers registered at Delhi have to file on 24th. So to avoid the portal traffic, because they also know most of the assessees have a turnover of less than 5 crores and they are facing the problem, let's relax it. It was a very welcome move. But one very serious and instigating issue happened in Twitter on 20th of November 2019, because the government is very active in Twitter. CBIC is very much active, even the GST portal. What happened? Many number of chartered accountants, advocates, trade industry started complaining because it was very much bothering them on the due date because they were not able to file the return. One statement was issued which said at every network, every system has threshold, upper threshold limit. More than that number of people cannot use it at a time. If they use it, it will crash. So like that, GST portal has an upper limit of 1.5 lakh people at a particular moment. If more than that, they have to wait. And when few people file their return and go, you will be entering automatically if you are waiting. But this was not good statement, because as we have seen in our first starting itself, there are about 1.22 crore assessees registered. When a statement is issued like that, only 1.5 crore can file. And they also said, I have not reproduced here, where they say it is the responsibility of the assessee or the duty of the assessee not to wait till last period and file 3 days before it. This was not a very encouraging statement, and many of them took it in a very wrong way. So this is one particular issue. Now a very interesting issue where a big debate was going on whether interest is chargeable on net liability or gross liability. Now the question arises whether GST can be filed, GSTR 3B can be filed even without making a full payment of tax or just making a part payment of tax. So the situation is like that. The outward liability is of rupees 1 lakh. The assessee has a credit of rupees 80,000. Okay. So he is not able to file the GSTR 3B on the due date because he is not having enough cash of 20,000. So he is unable to file the return on that day. Whether by having that 80,000 in hand, credit ITC for that particular month or for the previous month, whichever is in its credit ledger, where he has an outward liability of 1 lakh, can he file? Can he make payment at least the liability of the 80,000? Should the portal allow it? Or only when he can pay the 20,000 cash, he should be allowed to file the return. Even as on date, with the credit amount available, a taxpayer is unable to file the return only when he also pays the liability using cash. Only then a 3B can be filed. But this was something to be noted from the 31st GST Council meeting minutes. This extract images from the minutes where they clearly say law permits furnishing. I'm reading this first one where it says law permits furnishing of return without payment of full tax as self-assessed as per the said return, but the said return would be regarded as an invalid return. no such, next they say, no such facility has been made yet available on the common portal. The inflexibility of the system increases the interest burden. So it is very clear from the agenda, very clear from the lawmakers, very clear from the angle of GST Council that a 3B can be filed even without making full payment of tax. It will be considered as an invalid return, but if that was allowed, then automatically interest should be calculated only on the net liability and not on the gross liability. So I think there what law says is different. The portal functions is something different. Even after GST Council meeting, in 31st GST Council meeting itself, this was discussed. Even now the provision is not notified and the system has not been incorporated. Because of this, too many assessees have been affected. There was another interesting case before the Honorable Gujarat High Court. It was challenged 3B is not at all a return because 3B is not at all a return as under section 39(1) read with rule 61. What as initially proposed, whatever is under section 39 is only a return. The court held, reading the provision of section 39(1) and rule 61, we find that 3B is not at all a return. Okay, so 3 is only a return as mentioned under section 39(1). And this case went up to the High Court because section 16(4) deals with time limit for availing the input tax credit, which says the due date of filing of GSTR 3B of the subsequent financial year September return, that is 20th of October of the subsequent year, assuming for the tax period of 17-18, ITC can be availed as per section 14 until 20th October 2018. Then later on the government relaxed and made it to 31st of March 2019 also. Even then few of the assessees did not take the credit pertaining to 17-18. One major reason was 2A was not reflecting. Assessee were also not ready with the systems. Now this assessee, this is a chartered accountant company, AAP and company, approached and challenged the validity of 3B itself, whether it is a return itself or not. The court held, reading section 39(1) and rule 61, it is not at all a return. So it opened the closed doors, stating that credit for the year 17-18 can be availed by the recipient until the date of filing of annual return, which is also a condition in 16(4). Now the government was stuck up. This case is still pending in the SLP state at Supreme Court. Within that, they brought an amendment to Rule 61(5) itself and inserted in such a way, they amended in such a way, they gave a retrospective amendment. From 1/7/2017, this mistake was corrected and 3B was made as a return itself under notification 49 of 2019. So now this matter is pending. Let us see whether now it can be challenged whether retrospective amendments like this can be made. Next is another interesting case. It was a very recent decision of the Delhi High Court, Bharti Airtel. During the initial stage of implementation of GST, the period involved in this case is July to September 17, July, August and September 2017, where assessee had made few mistakes, like they had not availed a huge amount of credit, ITC, for those invoices issued during the erstwhile regime of service tax. Credits were not, credit note which were issued were not considered properly, and when any service was being provided to the same GST registration, like same GST registration, 2 branches, from one branch to another branch, that was also treated as supply. So doing all these activities, they had made an excess payment of tax of 923 crores in cash after utilizing their credit. Now the circular, paragraph number 4 of 26 of 2017, the circular says when any mistake is being done in one particular return, it can be corrected in the subsequent returns when it is being identified. But now the petitioner challenges this para number 4 of the circular, stating that would put the petitioner in trouble because there was an excess payment of cash of amount of 923 crores. And I also understand one of the reason may be that now that 923 crores cannot be used in the subsequent returns. So they said we will amend that return. They prayed for amending the GSTR 3B return for July, August and September 2017. And Honorable High Court also held that statutorily, as we already discussed, GSTR 2 and GSTR 3, which were the original return, which are not operationalized. And because of this deficiency from the government, the applicant, the petitioner, was not able to claim the proper ITC, and hence they struck down the paragraph number 4 of the circular and allowed the petitioner to amend the GSTR 3B returns for July, August, and September 2017. So these are the return types of returns for a normal taxpayer: GSTR 1, GSTR 1, 2A, and 3B. There is no 2, 1A, and 3. So this is how it functions today. Next type of taxpayer was composition taxpayer, who is registered under Section 10, who cannot avail any input tax credit, even any output tax liability which has to be paid. He cannot collect it from the recipients, of the supply of goods or services, or both. So now, earlier, here also one interesting issue is there, because GSTR 4 is only a return as per Section 39. CMP 08 is not there. For all these days, until 1819, if I'm not wrong, a composition taxpayer had to file GSTR 4 quarterly and made the payment of tax. For the period of 1920, there was a change in it. Since GSTR 4 was a 7-page long return, many of the assessees were feeling hard to file it, because they opt for composition itself for simplification. Even in composition return, if you are asking for so long details, they were a little bit worried. So government, they understood it, and a single page statement, because the composition taxpayer did not avail any input tax credit, only his output liability was to be exposed and to be paid. So a single page statement came up in the form CMP 08, in which the payment of tax was being made, liability was disclosed and being made. The due date for filing that was 18th of the next month of the succeeding quarter. That means for the quarter of April, May, and June, that means 18th of July is the due date for filing CMP 08, where the payment of tax is being made. And they also had GSTR 4 and made it yearly once, because that is only a return. No? So GSTR 1 is a return as per Section 39, and it was made yearly once, the due date for which is 30th of April of the succeeding financial year. For the financial year 1920, the due date for filing GSTR 4 is 30th of April 2020. So these are the two types of return which the composition taxpayer has to file. Other than that, there is also an annual return, GSTR 9A. Now, the next type of registered person is non-resident taxable person. A non-resident taxable person is a non-resident of India. He is of some foreign country, comes to India for a limited period of time, does a business in India. For an example, any exhibition is being conducted in India, takes a temporary registration here in India. The registration is being provided for 90 days. And if any extension is also required, they also provide an extension. So whatever outward in advance tax is also to be paid by them, they have to see how much, they have to estimate how much their sale would be. And advance tax is also being paid by them. GST is also being paid by them. And now a non-resident taxable person also has to file a monthly return, providing the details of inward and outward supplies. The due date for filing GSTR 5 is the return which a non-resident taxable person has to file. This 20th of the next month. Suppose a registration has been taken for 90 days from April 1st to June 30th. Then for the April month return, it has to be filed on 20th of May. Suppose the registration itself is being taken only for 20 days, then it has to be filed on 27th of April itself. This is how a non-resident taxable person has to file a return. Next is input service distributor. This is where a credit has been accumulated in the hands of the input service distributor. Then he has to send it. The credit has to be transferred to the branches and the head office based on their proportionate turnover, as the provisions in Section 20 of the CGST Act deals with input service distributors. Now, whatever credit which ISD transfers, first he has to receive it. It is received, so the supplier files in GSTR 1. Since the ISD distributor, import service distributor, does not have any true and all, it reflects in his GSTR 6A. So when the credit is being transferred, it is being transferred to the branches through GSTR 6, and whatever credit is available, it can be checked in 6A, as in it is 2A for the normal taxpayers. So now whatever it is being transferred to through GSTR 6 to the branches, it appears in 2A of those branches. So this is how input service distributor transfers his credit, common credit, and the due date for transferring such credit is 13th of the subsequent month. For the month of April to May 2020, ISD shall file GSTR 6 by 13th of June 2020. So this is how ISD functions. Next type of return is TDS, tax deducted at source. Any person who is registered, all those who are under section 51 51 of the CGST Act are required to deduct 2%, that is 1% CGST and 1% SGST, or 2% IGST in the case of IGST transaction when the contract value exceeds 2,50,000, and those deducted amount should be filed and payment should be made to the government through GSTR 7. I am rushing all these things because it's not of general use in everyday's life. Very few assessees have this, and due to the paucity of time, the due date for filing of GSTR 7 is 10th of the subsequent month. Same TCS, a new concept was introduced for those taxpayers, for those assessees who are e-commerce operator like AliExpress, Amazon, Flipkart. So any supplier who makes a supply through this e-commerce operator, when the e-commerce operator makes the payment to the supplier, they are required to deduct 1% of IGST or 0.5 CGST and 0.5 SGST, and this is to be filed, and the payment has to be made on 10th of the subsequent month through GSTR 8. Next comes the annual returns, GSTR 9 and 9C, GSTR 9 for a normal taxable person and 9A for a composition taxable person. Initially, for the period of 17-18, it was understood and it was accepted that all taxpayers, whoever has taken a registration, other than TDS, registered person, TCS, ISD, casual taxable person, non-resident taxable person, any person who has taken a registration was mandated to file an annual return. Later on, for the period of 18, there was an option given by notification number 47 of 2019 stating that any assessee who has a turnover of up to 2 crores, it is optional for them. It is not mandatory for them to file an annual return. So, but also with the condition that whoever has not filed an annual return up to the due date, under this condition, it is deemed that they have filed a return, GSTR 9. Then GSTR 9, it is to be filed for GSTN level. That means each registration wise and not a PAN wise. Like example, an assessee has a registration in Tamil Nadu, another registration in Andhra Pradesh. Say in Tamil Nadu itself, he has 2 registrations. Even though it is under same PAN, since there are 2 different GST registrations, for each registration, each GST number, separate GSTR 9 is to be filed. And the late fee for this is also being notified, 100 rupees per day per act, 100 rupees per CGST Act, 100 rupees per SGST Act. So 200 rupees per day if you are not filing within the time limit. There is no late fee under IGST Act, and subject to a maximum of 0.2% of the turnover of that state or whichever is lower. So these are the basic conditions. But what is the purpose behind this annual return? This annual return is just a reconciliation of my GSTR 1, GSTR 3B, because I provide, the supplier provide, the assessee provides this liability in GSTR 1, GSTR 3B, as well as the books of accounts, So it's a reconciliation of all these three. To again understand, GSTR 1 came on a later stage. GSTR 3 was if any short payment of tax is being made, then the same can be paid at the time of filing of GSTR 9 or 9C. Same is for input tax rate also. Reconciliation of ITC for GSTR 2A. Whatever credit has been received in GSTR 2A and whatever credit has been taken in GSTR 3B. And as per my books of accounts. So reconciliation of all these three are being done. The due date for filing of GSTR 9 is as per the provisions of law, it is on 31st December of the subsequent financial year. So for the financial year of 17-18, it should be 31st of December 2018. But since the 9 was itself not ready very much during that time, after several extensions, it finally came up during February 2020. The due date for filing of GSTR 9 for the period of 17 and 18 was on during 7th of February, I suppose. What is GSTR 9C? It is just a reconciliation statement of perfect returns, perfect liability arrived as per my GSTR 9, as per GSTR 9 on one hand, and as per the audited books of accounts. So an auditor, a chartered accountant or cost accountant has to do GSTR 9C. Reconciliation has to be done over here. So it is not mandatory for everyone. Initially, it was only for those assessees having a turnover of more than 2 crores, but later on, for the period of 18-19, a recent notification, 23rd March, I think so, 2020 was issued, stating that turnover assessees, those who have a turnover of more than 5 crores, are required to do audit for the financial year 18-19. And now understanding what the purpose behind GSTR 9C is, since this is categorized based on the turnover limit. So they are targeting a little bigger business. So where there are chances of leakage of taxes to plug in those, or where there has been extraordinary availment of input tax credit to plug in those. So they have brought this where an auditor, chart accountant or a cost accountant does a reconciliation of GSTR 9 with the books of accounts of P&L account and balance sheet, whatever is being disclosed in that. There is an exemption given those registered those taxpayers for whom CNAG audit is being done under section 35(5) of this act. For them, GSTR 9C is not required, and due date for filing this GSTR 9C is 31st of December of the subsequent month. And in line with GSTR 9, it was also extended several times. Due to the paucity of time, I think I can stop this with the permission of Joseph sir and APS sir with this slide alone. Sir? APS sir or Joseph sir, can I stop with this slide? Hello?
1 minute, then I'll unmute them.
Yeah.
I've
unmuted you.
Yes.
Sir, I will end with this slide, sir, or shall I continue further?
No, you're in the late fee only, no?
Yeah, late fee. After that, I have new returns.
I think you can stop with this because it is
okay.
There are
sir.
questions actually.
Fine, sir. I'll stop with this alone then. One interesting highlight which I wanted to bring before all of you was GST late fees. So we all know when a 3B is being filed late, 25 rupees per day is being collected, 50 rupees is being collected to an upper limit of rupees 5,000 per act. But understanding a survey, there is an RTI application file, and these figures which are in this slide pertains only for the period during April 19 to December 19 and not from July 2017 at all. These are only figures of April 19 to December 19, which disclose that the government has collected average of 200 crores as late fee for 1 month. So for this 9 months, 1,898 crores was collected as late fee. So there's something to be thought upon, and waiver should be given to the assessees, I think, because seeing on this, very, very small assessees had paid the late fee amount, even more than the tax which they were liable to pay. So this is something to be considered. So with the permission of last thing, I'm ending with this slide alone. Last thing, there were few writ petitions before the High Court also, and few representations also being made. Initially, what happened?
Nitin. Hello, Nitin. APS sir, I've unmuted you. I think
yes, but Nitin is not audible.
I think he got some network
issue. Unmute.
If he can rush through the new provisions also slightly, you can.
Yes,
touch.
sir. That's why.
Otherwise, you can have it as a separate session, subject to what Mr. Joseph Prabha says.
No, I think APS that is not required now. I'll explain.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Whatever good work he has done will be undone if he is going to do that.
Okay, understood.
We are not here to rush through something and then say that we have done something.
Okay.
He has made such meticulous presentation of all this.
Yes.
It is because after all this have not been notified.
Oh, yes.
What is explained today will go for 6. If he's going to explain the new return, which has not even been notified in 5 minutes.
Yes. Yes. Now,
I don't want Nitin's good work to go waste.
yes. Yes.
This
Our,
will stay with the participants forever.
yes. Yes. As and when it is introduced, we will have.
Yes. And it's 6:30 now. He has to take another half an hour to explain. I don't think it will be possible.
Yes.
Nitin, I've unmuted you. Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah.
I think there's
yes,
some network
sorry, I lost my connection. I apologize for it. Yeah, I lost my connection. Sorry. Yeah.
So Nitin, as Joseph sir has put it, we will end this here
Yeah.
itself. We can
Okay,
have
okay.
a separate session on the new returns whenever.
Yes, Nitin,
Okay.
have you finished, Nitin?
Sir, last I have left that alone. If time permits, I can finish that. I won't take more than 2 minutes.
No.
Something
That's why I'm saying
new feature.
if you do it in 2 minutes, all the good work what you have done for the 90 minutes, in my considered opinion,
Yes,
will
sir.
be undone. Because the participants, as it is, you explain 1, 2, and then 3, not come into force. Then
Yes,
1, 2A,
sir.
3B now, which has come into force. Now again, if you go back to this new return, which RET1, RET, PET, all of that, people will get confused. End of the day, there will be no value add.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate you have done an enormous
Okay,
work.
sir.
What I suggest we will
No,
do separate.
I'm not.
He's talking about the last slide, sir.
Okay.
Last slide you can go ahead. No problem.
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
Yes. Last slide you can
That
go
slide
ahead.
alone. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. This is the last slide which I'll be dealing today. This
Yes,
deals with PMT09. What happened in the initial days? The system was little ulta. First it had IGST, then it should actually have CGST, but it had SGST before that. So what happened? Few taxpayers, assessees, had made the payment of tax under SGST head instead of CGST head. So it went on to SGST, and the law says SGST cannot offset with CGST or CGST cannot offset with SGST. So this was an issue. Many people approached the high courts. The high court said, do something, open it. There are also many representations. Later on, very recently, this feature was also enabled by the GST portal, where if within the cash ledger, not to the credit ledger, within cash ledger, if payment of tax has been made into any head wrongly, it can be transferred to any head which you wish. CGST, if any cash was made, can be transferred to SGST or IGST, vice versa. And also another very notable thing is that even if cash payment was made in tax head, but it is now required to be paid for interest or penalty or late fee, it can be transferred from a major head to minor head. This is a very welcome move. It was a very good move. It's very useful to many assessees. Thank you. I thank everyone for sparing so much of time. Thanks a lot. I'm not going with the new returns. Over to you, Joseph, sir.
No, Nitin, please don't mistake me, because you remember.
Sir, not at all, sir. Not at all. I understand, sir. We'll take up the questions, sir.
Yeah, APS actually, Nitin did one with me on the entire thing as usual. And I must admit that I did not get through with the new return. I couldn't understand it fully. And I spent about 25 minutes, I couldn't. So if you go do it in 2 minutes or 5 minutes, I don't think it will serve any purpose, and it will probably go to damage whatever he has done. And whatever Nitin has done today is, I would say today is the best presentation, because today's return, talking about return, making a presentation about returns is the most difficult thing, like making an art film. It's like no masala, there's no movie, I mean, there's no song. It's very dry, and still, you have to make so much of research, not like reading a case law and then coming out with interpretation. He's done a wonderful job today. I would say probably the best presentation which Nitin has done. Because the most difficult topic to talk about, because you have to really visualize every situation. In fact, I suggested to him that you take us through the portal, which was an option. I said, please take us through the portal, show us all the, because none of us is, like we advocates, we don't deal with, unlike the chartered accountants, we don't go hand-holding with the client to get through the procedure. So for us, it is kind of abstract. That's why I said be a little, in fact, ideally it could have been a little slower, but it was good, very, very good. People have to really concentrate and then keep up with the speed. As Natarajan said, internet speed was slower than Nitin. Perfectly right, yes. So thanks, Nitin, wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, sir.
So, thank you very much, Nitin, and thank you, Joseph, sir. In fact, I have got a couple of messages on my WhatsApp asking me to particularly tell that you did a great job today. And in fact, the idea of taking through the GST portal was actually. So you get a practical look. So thank you very much. Now to all participants, the floor is open for question answer session. In fact, I saw a lot of debate happening already in the chat box.
Oh, I didn't see.
It's good you didn't see. So we can take up questions. First, I see hands raised. Jay Kumar sir, I'll unmute him.
Yeah.
Joseph sir, you can unmute, sir.
Audible?
Yes, sir. Jay Kumar sir, again unmuted.
Hello.
Jay Kumar sir.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so my question is regarding GSTR 5 and GSTR 3B. GSTR 5, you said non-residents are expected to file the return.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
What is the threshold limit? Because my question depends on that.
Sir, when a non-resident comes to India, he is mandatory required to take a registration.
Okay.
So once he is required to take a registration, I don't think so threshold limit will be applicable.
Okay.
He has to
Now,
file the
my
return.
question now is very, very specific. T20
Yes, sir.
cricket players come to India.
Yeah.
They play one in Bangalore, one in Nagpur, one in Delhi, final somewhere. They have to get 5 registrations.
Yeah.
Okay, one. If they don't,
Yeah.
who the hell will pay? Who will get the input credit? Who will do the final return? Because the way you are saying there are 9 returns, 10 returns you have to file.
Yes,
And
sir.
you cannot ask them to leave the country and they'll confiscate the passport.
Mm-mm.
This is one issue I wanted to address because the day-to-day issue. Of course, nobody has asked an opinion on this. There's a big article I wanted to write on T20 itself on various aspects of TDS. Are they goods? Are they etc. So they're all worth about 10 crores and 8 crores and 9 crores.
Yes, sir.
So it's not simply the amount. It's a responsibility. That responsibility means they are entering services. So they are liable to GST, I know for sure. So this to clarify. Second one is the GSTR 3B, you made an interesting point. I have a liability of 1 lakh, but I have, and you say whether part payment, that return can be uploaded, etc. Now I'm just asking you because Joseph is there and others are there.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I will respond.
Yeah, you have this CCS, cash compensatory support, duty drawback. Supposing we suggest somebody will pay that balance, okay, so that they'll not be default, the business has to go on. Then you pay them separately or do what you want. Suppose I am a group concern. I have, let's say I have some credit extra and I have somewhere else authorized elsewhere. But I can file the return. Everybody is a good clean assessment. You take TVS company or you take Bajaj or you take your own firm. Like Swami Associate, they have 23 chartered accountant, 23 firms. Why can't they take the credit and pay this balance of 20,000 and they come with a clean hand? If a suggestion can be made, because it's only a contra entry. These are my questions. Joseph?
Yes, sir. Sir, actually, I'll just read out the definition of non-taxable person because we'll have to understand who do they want to capture in this particular provision. 277 says non-taxable, non-resident taxable person means any person who occasionally undertakes transactions involving supply of goods or services or both, whether as principal or as agent or in any other capacity, but who has no fixed place of business or residence in India. So the provision says that if somebody is coming, like your typical example, which even Nitin was discussing this afternoon with me, typically an IPL player who comes, there is a requirement for him to register and make payment. Equally, there is a provision specifically to get hold of that person if he is not going to pay. Like you said, his passport will be confiscated. There are no such provision. It only says it's only an enabling provision to get through with people or persons who come from abroad, render some services or probably make some sale of goods or whatever supply. They're required to pay. Nitin, please correct me if I'm wrong. No TCS, TDS provision for non-taxable,
Yes, sir.
non-resident taxable person, there's no TDS requirement to the extent I know.
Uh,
So therefore, this
Sir,
provision,
TCS provision, if they make any, yes, sir. Proceed, sir. You proceed, sir.
that's what. So, so today the provision is there. One second, I'll just see.
I'll tell you why. I got a classic example. People
Yeah.
who come to play Wimbledon, no, first round, second round, third round, deliberately they lose it, go away. The
Okay.
reason is they make the money, otherwise the whole world income will be taxed.
Okay.
I read it somewhere. So they only want certain points from Wimbledon. They don't want to win the trophy.
Okay.
Like, this Boris Becker, he's an installment now.
Okay.
Even Steffi Graf is insolvent in German laws are so strict. So
Okay.
most of the players, they come for a 20 days winning, 17
Oh.
days winning. And if it is
Okay.
cancelled, they run away immediately.
Okay. Okay.
That's why I'm asking this question.
Okay, because this is section 9.3 and 9.4 of the CGST Act, which talks about reverse charge.
That's correct, RCM.
As far as goods are concerned, there's no problem because till October 2017 it was there, then it is done away with for once and for all good, at least till today. As far as services are concerned, there have been services which have been notified under section 9.4. But I do not think these one which we are talking about, the IPL and all that, forms part of that.
No, but they're all auctioned, They're all goods.
No,
The team is auctioned.
the team is auctioned, but then suppose there's a player A who receives money from whoever, he receives money for playing in a league, not for selling goods. So therefore, it will still remain a service only, not goods. Maybe for the person who takes Reliance or somebody who takes in the auction,
Correct.
and then probably wins. Maybe the interpretation will be maybe different for him. But
Yes.
as far as the player who's receiving money is concerned, from in the hands of the recipient player, the nature is only of rendering a service.
Okay.
Therefore,
Thank you.
today the provision is there. There is probably no mechanism to get this fixed.
Because, for example, when you go abroad, as like Malaysia, Singapore, you
Yes.
can always, submit the voucher at the airport, get the VAT refund. Some
Yes,
of us,
yes,
we
yes.
don't even do that. But
Yes.
like that, these fellows, they owe the government. It's
Yes.
reverse.
Yes.
That's why I'm asking you. Okay.
No, true. That kind of a provision is not there. In fact, I may sound a little negative, but that is the truth. Today, GST is running on ad hoc basis. Everything is on ad hoc. Whether it is GST 2A, 3B, 10%, 20%, returns, whatever, 29 provisions are notified but not given effect to. All of that is happening. It's just it's whole lot of chaos. So probably the government will have to step in and then look up so many things. All answers. I'm sorry. All questions and no answers. That is the state of affairs.
Absolutely, 100% right. Absolutely
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're recording second one about the Form 3B.
Yes, sir.
Only-
I've Natarajan sir wants to supplement here. I've unmuted Natarajan.
Yeah, Mr. Kaur.
Yeah, as rightly observed by Joseph Prabhakar, wherever services are received by a person who is located abroad, it will be covered under RCM. So that person need not obtain any registration and the recipient will be liable to pay in most of the cases. But if not, even though the definition covers both goods and services, for services there will not be any problem because it is covered under RCM. And for goods, whenever a non-resident person comes to India and makes a supply, for example, take part in an exhibition and effect a sale, then he will be required to take out a registration, pay the tax for that. For services, there won't be any problem.
Good.
Yes, sir. Your second question on 3B.
Yeah. So I have liability of 1 lakh.
Yes,
I have
sir.
a credit of 80,000.
Yes.
So what Nitin said is even part, compliance also can go under GSTR 3B.
Yeah.
What I'm asking is, you remember the old CCS, cash compensated support, or
Yeah.
duty drawback, all those things.
Yeah.
Like that, if you have a group company with me, like example, you
Yeah.
take India Cements or TVS,
Yeah.
some will have plus, some will have minus. If
Yeah.
they can accommodate, pass and accommodate entry and give you the 20,000 rupees,
Yeah.
I'm a clean man, okay? If that mechanism can be suggested to anybody, if you think it's worth it, do you think it's possible in law?
No, sir. Please come again. I'm not able to get.
See, for example, you have the duty drawback facility earlier. Okay?
Yes. Yes.
You had a cash compensated support in import laws.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
for example, one company in our group company has got too much of credit. Other
Yes.
company has got too much of deficit.
Yes.
Let's say a common office handles all the GSTRs. In
Yes, yes.
Chennai, in same branch, everything, okay?
Yes. Yes.
And they not transfer this 20,000 from X unit to Y unit and then solve the problem.
Sir,
Because no, there's no question interest element,
No, sir. I've now understood. Your question was theoretical for some time back. In fact, I did discuss this in detail with one of my clients actually.
I see.
The general feeling is that a taxpayer under GST has to comply with the payment of tax requirement by making payment himself through the portal. But I understand there is a possibility that anybody else can make the payment.
Very good, very good. Yeah,
On behalf of somebody else.
Yes, okay.
It's
See, under
possible,
Contract
it is
Act, the
possible.
consideration can come from somebody else.
Yeah, it is
Under the
possible.
Contract Act, third party can give a consideration.
Yes, yes, it is possible, sir. That is, suppose you are short of funds.
Correct.
B or B Limited can step in, make the payment, maybe as a
Like Google
make
Pay,
the
no?
payment.
They substitute my payment.
Yes,
So
they can.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
A very good presentation. Nitin, I was so impressed.
yes, sir.
Nitin, you have been unmuted. Any other? Joseph sir, there were a few clarifications happening in the
Yeah, in the chat box.
chat
Yeah, I'll just come to that.
because I don't think anyone else is having any questions right now.
Yeah, I know. Okay, fine. Yeah. I'll just come to that. Mr. Gokunesh has asked something. I'll just read out his question and Mr. Gokunesh says,
Advanced receipt, something.
yes, sir. Yeah. Please explain the GST paid on advance receipt from customers where advance receipt voucher is issued and also when the final invoice is raised on completion of the contract. Declare in GSTR 1 return for the benefit of members. The request is made since the recipient cannot take credit based on advance receipt voucher and further credit can be taken only based on the final invoice. It will not reflect in GSTR 2A of the recipient when receipt voucher is issued. Yes, perfect. In fact,
We had a discussion on it, sir.
yes, Nitin.
Yes, sir. 16. We also had a discussion on it. Section 15(2) mandates that only on the receipt of invoice you can take a ITC input tax.
Yes.
But for an advance receipt you cannot take. But
Absolutely.
again, that is also debatable, sir, because section advance receipt is also from section 31 under which invoice is being issued.
Yes.
So we were also thinking whether advance receipt can be treated as invoice for that particular transaction is one. And second, if it is considered that it is not an invoice and ITC cannot be claimed on the advance receipt,
Yes.
even then, at the time when the GSTR 1 is filed for against the advance receipt, it will not reflect in 2A, and you cannot claim an ITC for it.
Yes.
Input tax rate cannot be claimed. Only
Yes.
when an invoice is being issued for the whole value, it will reflect
Yes.
in 2A, and ITC
Yes.
can be claimed for it.
Yes, correct. So the provision is very clear. Take credit on invoice / debit note, credit note. That's all. Like the duty paying document provision under the erstwhile excise law, Senvat credit rules, where they used to list down number of documents which are eligible duty paying documents. Instead of voucher for payment of differential duty customs under the CVD and all that, it will become a duty paying document. Anything and everything, virtually whatever is listed, which was listed in Senvat credit rules, such a provision or such a wide provision is not available in GST. GST is very simple, clear. In this situation, it is very restrictive. It says take credit on invoice or and debit note, credit note, nothing more. So therefore, though the taxpayer will be unduly affected by not allowing to take the credit on payment made on the receipt of advance, he has actually paid, tax has been paid by the supplier, still he won't be able to get the credit. The reason is very simple, because if any advance is received, section 31.4, 31.3 says you will have to pay the tax and then give a advance receipt voucher. In fact, there is a specific rule which gives the entire thing for
50, sir, rule 50.
51.
Yes, sir.
There is a specific rule which gives 50, 51, which says, I'm sorry, 50, 50 talks about receipt voucher. It says, if you read, I'll just read 50 for a minute. It says the receipt voucher referred to in 31.3d. 31.3d refers to advance. Shall contain the following particulars. It starts from A, ends with K. Name and address of the supplier, identification, GST number, date of its issue, serial number, name and address of the recipient, description of goods, services, amount of advance taken, rate of tax, amount charged, then place of supply, whether tax is payable, reverse charge, digital signature. All of these particulars contained in receipt voucher, all the details which are required to be furnished in the receipt voucher to be issued by the person is actually the same details which are to be disclosed in an invoice.
Hello.
I want to call it as a receipt voucher. Why they want to do it? I was just thinking why this provision at all for so much detailed provision for receipt voucher is because they want the person, the moment you receive money, you pay tax, but you also freeze. What is it for? What is the rate? All of that. Don't keep anything without clarity or without finality. So whatever you will disclose in the invoice, you will have to disclose in the form of advance. In fact, I would say that by making the provision relating to receipt vouchers so complicated and so minute, with minute details, the taxpayer, if he is a prudent person, would rather issue a tax invoice straight away than issue a receipt voucher. Discourage people from receiving advance and not raising an invoice. Because I do the whole thing all over again with all of this. Mr. rightly said,
Mr. Prabhakar,
receipt voucher will not get reflected in 2A.
Yes.
Question of availment of credit does not arise. Yes, sir. And there is a separate requirement for issue of invoice.
No, Joseph sir, I want to receive. Hello, yeah. Joseph sir, I want to compliment this. In GSTR 1, there is a separate column for mentioning the amount received under advance receipt vouchers and the service tax payable on that. Payable on that. But the question here is, it is only the information. But when you raise a final invoice, there is another column to adjust the advance and the raise. Then only it will go to 2A. So during this period, your capital is locked. You cannot take the credit, particularly in the case of in the engineering industries where advance is paid for installation, commissioning, supply of materials, various issues, all these things. So all the things that is to be reflected in the GSTR 1. That's a black capital one, number 1, sir.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. In fact, if you see column E in 51, it says description of goods or services. You will have to say what it is.
Yes.
He says rate of tax. You can't say advance 8%, 5%, then 18%, 18 or 5. You can't. You have to freeze that.
There is another issue there, sir. Suppose when I receive
GST law is extremely stringent. You should read it from that way. You can't read GST law that is assessee friendly. Maybe the people who said at the time implementation said GSTR will bring this good to all the assessees. I don't think so. It is this thing. It is every word you read, it is becoming harsher every day.
Yes.
Every line is stringent. GSTR has to be interpreted that way. Otherwise, go and charge it before the High Court.
Secondly, sir, when I receive the advance, assume the tax rate is 5%.
Yes.
But when I raise the final invoice, the tax is 8% means.
Yes.
Then when I raise the final invoice, I have to charge only 8%, not 5%. The difference.
Absolutely.
That is another issue because the customer has to accept this change of rate, all these things.
Yes, yes,
Be
yes.
careful on that, sir. That's why I wanted to bring it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. I think we have extensively dealt with returns and Nitin and yourself, sir, for this wonderful session. Uh, and and I thank Jaykumar sir and Gokarnation sir also for coming and supplementing, as well as Natarajan sir. So, so with your permission, we can end the session now, sir.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So I thank once again to all the participants for joining us today. This session will be uploaded on YouTube very soon. In fact, yesterday's session also has to be uploaded, which will be done at the earliest, probably by tomorrow. So I thank everyone for joining us again today. If for tomorrow's session, we will share the details as early as possible. So thank you once again for the participants. Have a good day and stay safe. I'm ending the meeting now.
Thank you all.
Thank you.